Speed does not come from moving fast. Speed actually comes from being as efficient as you possibly can.
Hey guys, welcome to Whiskey, Lead, and Steel, Feelings Hurt While You Wait, the official podcast of Aggressive Defensive Solutions. I'm Lee Curling, and with me, as always, Rick Sutton. So Rick, what are we going to talk about?
We're going to talk about some of the small things that we see, and this is not us chucking rocks at anybody. This is absolutely meant to help people get a little bit better because you don't always recognize what you're doing. But some of the small things and some of the things that you can focus on to just make you a little bit better, not only from a competitive standpoint, but from an operational standpoint, because you're operating in that brackish water there. So among them, first and foremost, first thing that I like to think about is and talk about is the fact that speed does not come from moving fast and being flashy. Speed, when we're talking about any kind of fighting, shooting, throwing hands, whatever it is, speed actually comes from being as efficient as you possibly can, right? Only doing, that which you absolutely have to and nothing more. Not covering any ground you don't have to, not expending any energy that you don't have to, any of that, or telegraphing, anything like that. And so as we've gone to the matches, and we have clients who shoot in our matches, and we have people who are not clients who are friends of ours, and the whole goal, I think, to shooting in a match is to make you a little bit better at what you're doing, either to make you a better competitive shooter or to make you a better operational shooter, right? Because it's a great test bed and it's a great way to inoculate yourself against stress. So what are some of the things that you see that people know better than to do, but they get wrapped up in the competitive thing and they end up letting it slip?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to stop for a second because, all right, I'm going to insert, I showed you a picture earlier.
Yes.
Right. That one of our shooters that shot with us for years, he posted months and months ago. He is on the Navy's shooting team, but it's an hilarious picture.
Oh yeah.
And the attribution is on the picture. It's
amazing.
Instagram. It's and unfortunately I can't bring the picture up because it's my phone's
on your
phone.
phone.
My phone's over there. Armed Asian is who did this. But again, I'll throw that picture up over top of our face while we're talking about this. But it's
perfect.
It is missing some of those early fundamentals. It's shooting past some of those fundamentals, and because we've shot past some of those fundamentals to do some other really cool stuff, it's time to go, okay, you need to step back and pick up some of those fundamentals. The draw.
Yeah.
Right. And when Amy and I took class last year, one of the things that they said was, it's whatever grip you've got, go with it.
Yep.
And I think one of the things I see on the range more than anything else is people getting stuck in what just happened. You mentioned earlier, and I'll let you talk about it, but being focused on this step.
Yeah.
And not the previous steps.
Yeah.
And in this, and it's more than just the draw, but somebody will come up, bobble their draw, come up with kind of a bad grip, and I will see this more times than not. They have a bad grip, and this is what I see.
Yeah.
Right. It's you make a face, you shake your head, you're mad at yourself.
You yell shit.
You're mad at yourself for fumbling it. You spend a second and a half cussing at yourself for a bad draw, as opposed to going, you've got a solid grip. It's not like you only have 2 fingers on it. You got a solid grip. It's just not the proper master grip. Mm-hmm. And you know what? When you press the trigger, you hit the target. So while working on your draw to always be able to consistently get a good master grip will help everybody. Accepting imperfection will help you even more.
Mm-hmm. And working through it.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. It's working through it. And when I say the accepting the imperfection is the going, oh, I have the grip I have. Alrighty, line the sights up, press the trigger, go, let it go bang. Mm-hmm. Right?
Exactly right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So to that end, one of the things that we talk about as you're working fundamentals, right? So if you have a horrible grip, a perfect sight picture, and a perfect trigger press, you can make the shot.
Absolutely.
If you have a perfect grip and a mediocre sight picture and a perfect trigger press, you can probably make that shot. If you have a perfect grip and a perfect sight picture and you maintain a perfect sight picture even while you have a crap trigger press, you can probably still make that shot. Mm-hmm. It's Chris Epperson, shout out to him. Yep. Chris Epperson explained it to me one time as the fire triangle. What do you got to have? Heat, fuel, oxygen. You take away any one of those things, you can't have fire. He said if you want to make a good shot, ideally you have perfect grip, perfect trigger pressure, perfect sight picture. But realistically, as long as they're perfect, you can get away with either two. Any two of those three. And the other one can be kind of mediocre, you'd be okay. And then, of course, he demonstrated by flipping his gun upside down and pulling the trigger with his ring finger, of course. Right? Yeah. So, or holding on to it and literally slapping his hand with his trigger with his hand. So it makes sense. But yeah, and when Lee says you lost a minute and a half, or a second and a quarter. Here's where that comes from. Mm-hmm. You took your shot and you missed, and it took you a quarter of a second to realize that you missed. Mm-hmm. And it took you a quarter second to get pissed off at yourself that you missed. And it took you a quarter second to decide to say something. And it took you a quarter second to either make the face or say something. And then it took you a quarter second to re-engage on the target. That's a second and a quarter. Mm-hmm. And that's where that comes from. Mm-hmm. And it's absolutely doable. I can't tell you how many times we've looked at splits on that. Training with the team or training with us, you come out here and a guy bobbles, goddamn it. And you go, oh, that little excerpt there, that loss of personal discipline cost you a second and a quarter. Second and a quarter is a lot of time. Mm-hmm. So one of the things that you've got to do is, and this takes a lot of discipline, a lot of personal self-discipline, is you got to teach yourself to focus on what's happening right now. This thing right now, whatever that stage is. And what just happened is irrelevant because you can't change it. And what you need to do 2 steps down the line is irrelevant because you can't get there till you get there, right? How do we eat an elephant? One bite at a time, lots of hot sauce. So if you say, all right, well, on the buzzer, I got to draw and fire 6 rounds on the target, and then I got to reload and I got to fire 6 rounds on the target. Well, the reality of it is when the buzzer goes off, what you have to do first is you have to get your hand on your gun. Mm-hmm. Nothing else matters because you can't do anything else till you do that. Once your hand's on your gun, you've acquired your master grip and defeated your retention device. Now what you got to do is get the gun out of the holster because nothing else is important. Then you got to get both hands on the gun. You got to get a sight picture on the target. You got to get your finger on the trigger. Now you got to go through the shooting process, and you got to go through the process of managing your recoil and managing your sight picture and managing your trigger press, all of which is its own separate thing that you have to do in sequence, in order. And then when the gun runs dry or at the end of the shooting thing, then what you have to do is you have to get your gun from off target and you got to conduct a reload. Mm-hmm. Except that the reload occurs in stages, right? And if you if you violate the length of stages and the direction of stages, you find yourself wasting time. So we're on target. We realize we've got to shoot. The first thing we've got to do is send the support hand for support ammo. Now you can move both hands at the same time. There's nothing wrong with that, right? Because you're moving in the same direction. But you got to get your hand, your gun hand, in front of your face. If you get your gun hand in front of your face about the time that your support hand reaches your magazine pouch, now as you take your magazine out of your magazine pouch, now what you have to do is you have to dump that magazine that's in your gun. Once it's out, now what you've got to do is insert the magazine. Step by step by step by step. And if you are looking at, if you've brought the gun way over here so you can see the target, you can't see your gun. You can't see what's happening with your handgun. Additionally, from a physiological standpoint, your arm is out of position, so now you're not as strong on the thumb. So now you find yourself pressing on the magazine release and nothing's happening. So now we make the fatal mistake of shaking the gun.
So now we do the John Wick.
The John Wick flip. Well, the problem is, when you move the gun, it's even harder to push down on the magazine release. And you're expending all this energy. And if your magazine pouch is here and your gun is here, it's a longer distance from here to here than it is from here to here, right? Say it's only 0.03 of a second more travel distance to here. Except that it's 0.03 of a second more from here to here to here, right? But now it's still 0.03 of a second more to here. Now we've added almost 1/10 of a second to something that should have been really easy and quick and smooth.
Right.
And I see that happen a lot. Now, one of the things that I notice with it as the day goes on is first stage of the match, almost everybody gets a textbook draw. Doesn't matter what stage they're on.
Right.
Their first stage of the day is almost a textbook draw, almost a textbook reload. And then as the day goes along, the hand starts to migrate and the elbows start to come out on the draw. And because that first one, they're hyper focused on what they've got going on, and they're dialed in on what's happening right here, right now, and they're focusing. But as the day goes on, they're like, wow, damn, I can't believe I missed that target from 35 yards 2 stages ago. And I really, I shoot better than that. Dude, that bullet already went down range. You can't do anything about that. If you want to jaw about it over some brown water later on in the evening, that's great. But if you're on stage number 3, thinking about stage number 1, you're not thinking about stage number 3. And stage number 3 is going to bite you in the ass. So you said you see the draw getting funky. I see the reloads get funky pretty quick. What else?
Next one gets into 2 aspects of body position.
Okay.
So I'll steal both of those.
Yeah.
One is just not leaning into the gun. Right. I mean, it's for male, right? Getting your chest, your shoulders over top of your toes, and for female shooters, getting your hips, over your toes, and with a lot of the female shooters, because it's getting the hips over the toes, and that being really seemingly an unnatural position to be in.
Oh yeah.
The almost universal aspect then is to turn yourself into a counterweight.
Yep.
Right? Squat, shove your butt out, and then lean forward. Because I'm supposed to lean into it.
Yeah.
And
so you end up with your hips over your heels.
So you end up with your hips, you end up with your butt shoved back, your hips over your heels, and then you're just trying to lean forward. And what you've done is you've just shrunk yourself. You shrunk yourself 6-7 inches.
Which takes time to do.
Which takes considerable time to do. Because on the draw, right, the only motion we should really be seeing, right, if you're from a competition standpoint, right, is the elbow and the shoulder
The shooting hand.
of the shooting hand
And the
driving out.
Elbow,
right?
the support hand as you come to index.
Right.
Yeah.
But the only motion that should be noticeable is up here.
Yeah.
It's not in the knees, not in the ankles, it's not in the butt,
It's not in the
not in
shoulders.
the head. And that's where I was going next, right? And then the other thing is the bringing the gun to a position. I'm just going to say a position, and then deciding to bring your 15-pound melon down behind it.
Tactical turtle.
Right? That's right, tactical turtle. Right? But those are two things from a body position standpoint that I see cost time.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is not necessarily, if you're firing 1 or 2 rounds, bad body position isn't really critical. You can go bang, and the bigger you are, right, the more you can fight the gun.
Yep.
Right? But you can get the first round off with no problem. You can get the second round off with no problem. But depending on how off from a good shooting position you are, the third one or the fourth round, you're going to be off balance enough that you have to readjust.
Yep.
Right? So if you're just doing that standing up straight, not necessarily a big deal for 1 or 2 rounds. Hear me out, right? But and that's not costing you any time if you're not getting in a good position. It's the squat, right? It's that squat position that easily takes a half to full second, right, of extra time. Or it's the head, right? Instead of bringing the 1 pound gun, right, or 1.5 pound gun up to your line of sight, you're bringing your 15-pound melon, and then you're trying to find your sights.
Yeah.
Right. So where are they? Right. So and that's it. So you've taken the time to come up onto where you think the target is, and now you're going to take an extra half to 3/4 second to kind of find your sights underneath there, and then move the gun over to wherever the sights are. And it's that, again, it goes back to a fundamental.
Yep.
Right. It goes back to a fundamental, and we see there are some shooters that are really fast, and they still are victim of doing these things.
Yeah.
And
they could be faster.
You try to go over the course of a day. This is 5 to 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Right. This is between a second to 2 seconds on every this one thing you do.
Yeah.
And then you add in you talk about the reloads.
Yep.
Right. That is, here's another second per stage.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a lot of shooters that are really good, that might be in the top 5 or 6, that are a victim of doing a couple of things, and if they stayed more consistent, could literally drop 15 seconds
over the course of a day
off of their time for the day, without becoming better shooters.
Yeah.
For anybody just listening, there, I use my air quotes, right? You don't have to get more accurate. You don't have to shoot any faster. You just have to step and go, okay, I've recognized, and we talked about in a previous podcast, about using video and some of those things to analyze. Yeah. Right. I think we're just kind of we're jumping on top of some things that are kind of a little more specific. Yeah. Right. So if you've taken that video, these are some of the specific things to start looking for, because you really can. I see some folks out there, and you try to make some, hey, if you work on this, right, and it makes significant differences.
Yeah. And so dovetailing in with that. So the first thing, the whole squat and head thing. I'll say this. I almost never see anybody who does the squat and the head duck doing both at the same time.
Oh, no, you're right.
So they squat,
You squat.
and then they head
and then
duck.
Yes.
That costs them time. And then if it's something that involves movement, now they have to change the shape of their body. They have to unsquat before they can move.
Right.
So that's a problem. And then you're absolutely right. So Jeremy Phillips, not a tiny fella,
No.
right? So Jeremy could probably stand shoulders over hips, hips over ankles, and just through sheer mass, get his SIG 320 out there and get pretty quick splits based on the fact that he's 215 pounds. And so the gun has to move 215 pounds backwards before it really comes off base. I'm a $190, right? If I lean into it, just get my shoulders out over my toes, I'm inherently faster because we already know about the whole physics aspect of the slide works better, the gun doesn't come as far off target in the first place, and it doesn't rock me back, thus causing me to rock back forward. So if you're one of these folks who is kind of standing upright or, got your shoulders over your hips and maybe your hips over your heels or hips over your ankles, and you're kind of locked into this and you're pretty quick, I promise you, if you will, and I know because I used to shoot like that. I was a Weaver shooter. When I first started shooting competitively, I was a Weaver shooter. And I was resistant to change, as I always am. And somebody said, look, just try this. And I tried it. And I immediately cut my splits in half. So if you will just, especially if you're a guy, it's easier. If you will just get your shoulders out over your toes and get your hips out over the balls of your feet, if you can, that alone will cause your splits. So you'll shoot faster. You'll shoot inherently faster because the gun will run faster and because physics means that the gun doesn't come nearly as far. We talk about every time the gun goes off and you have muzzle flip, you have to cover twice that distance. Well, if you stand upright straight, and you hold the gun, and then the gun comes off target 5 inches, that gun's your sights have to move 10 inches between shots. If you can lean into it so the gun only comes off 1 inch, you're only moving 2 inches. I'm not a math whiz, but 2 is considerably less than 10. And so those things alone, and working with how your body is designed, so that if you have to move from point A to point B, you don't have to change the shape of your body. When you draw your gun and you squat, in addition to taking the time necessary to change the shape of your body, we've talked about this, now you're exerting the energy on your quadriceps to squat. Squatting ain't easy. You don't believe me? Go out here, do 5 air squats, and stop halfway up on number 5. And hold it as long as you can. And I don't care what kind of shape you're in. After about 5-10 seconds, it ain't terribly comfortable. So it goes back to efficiency. Only doing that which you absolutely have to, only expending the energy that you have to, only covering the ground that you have to. So body position and the draw and the John Wick reload being all kinds of cool. What else?
I'm going to throw one last one out.
Yeah.
And that is the last fundamentals. And that is follow through, right?
Yeah. Got to do that one.
Time and time again, it is watching shooters, you fire, and they're already moving to the next target. And
they've missed,
and then come back, right? And I mean, obviously, it's noticeable on steel, but you're the misses on paper. Yeah. It's they don't notice it. I do, because you know when we're out there shooting at academy, you can look at the berm and where the shooter is. and you know where the impact site is on the burn. You may not be able to tell if it's an A or a C shot, but you know this is on the target.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And you go 5 shots, and the 6th shot is over here.
Mm-hmm.
Because they are transitioning to the second target.
Yep.
And they will throw that and they'll go, I don't know how I missed that. Well, because you were transitioning to the target. Well, you're pressing the trigger on the way to the second target.
So here's my card. Call me about some training. We'll sort that out for you. That's how you'll know.
So again, right?
Yeah.
If you're firing 1 round, 2 sight pictures. If you're firing 2 rounds
On one target.
on one target, 3 sight pictures. If you're engaging a target with 6 rounds, 7 sight pictures,
Marine Corps math.
right? If you only get 6 and you're transitioning, you're likely gonna miss. And I know there are people out there teaching competitive transitions and they violate that rule left and right. And you can get to a certain point where you think you're there, but the reality is it's not. Those people that are teaching those transitions are generally not, when you start really investigating what they're saying, they're not saying don't get that other sight picture, right? There's some efficiency that they're trying to build in that transition.
Yeah.
Right. And yeah, so if you ignore the second sight picture, you're gonna miss more.
It's like double tapping.
Mm-hmm.
And early in my competitive career, we played around with that set of games.
Mm-hmm.
Do the double tap. For those of you who don't know what a double tap is, a true double tap is you get a sight picture and you try to crank off 2 rounds before the gun comes completely off target. That's what a real double tap is.
Actual double tap.
That's an actual double tap. Yeah. It's really not a good idea. Really what you want is you want hammered pairs, which means that you got a sight picture, you press the trigger, and then as soon as the front sight settled back on target, you press the trigger again. And then you follow through and moved on.
Right.
But we tried the whole working across the target thing. It's just, if it works out for you that day, works great. The problem is, if it doesn't work out for you, it's fucking horrible.
Right.
And secondly, it almost never works out. It's like the guys who teach the whole point shoot thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, point shoot is great if you only ever engage targets at a given distance, at a given angle with a given gun. Other than that, but the first time any of that shit changes, that point shoot goes right out the window.
In a competitive situation, because there's no good guys in the direction down range, right?
And
absolutely.
And so when you start talking about bleed over from, so what's a better idea? Paying attention to your sights or hoping for the best.
Right. But
The other thing that comes along with that, and I was talking to one of our guys about it last match. When we start looking at time, if you're looking at the clock, if you draw your weapon, right, you got to knock over a head plate. You draw your weapon, and you get a perfect sight picture, and you get a perfect trigger press, and you hit the target, and it goes down, and it took you 2.25 seconds. Is that better than you pulled your gun, you cranked off a round at 1.8 and missed, and then you cranked off another round at 2.6 and missed, and then you slowed down, focused on your front sight, pressed the trigger smoothly, and hit the target at second 5.3. Which is better? You can only shoot as fast as you can hit the target, right? Speed is fine, but accuracy is final. and you can't miss fast enough to win in a gunfight.
It's funny you mentioned it because there was somebody, I don't remember who it was, so I'm not calling them out and saying that because I don't remember who it was, but I told him you really need to slow down because it was a shotgun blast of a target. Like, my training is, just shoot as fast as I can, and then I'm working on accuracy. Like, that's exact opposite of the way you get better.
Yeah.
Said you need to shoot. If you want to be an A zone shooter, if you want to say I'm going to shoot this clean all in the A zone, then you need to slow down and fire so you can get all however many rounds in the A, and then you continue to speed up until you're as fast as you can be with all in the A, and then you get a little bit faster, and you have a couple of them that go out of the A, and then you slow down a little bit, and then you maintain that speed, and then you speed up a little bit, and you'll go, oh, I'm now faster than I was when I was throwing a couple out. Oh, now I've thrown a couple out, and then you back it off, and then you go up, and then you back it off. You're never ever going to get more accurate if you're just blasting away as fast as you possibly can press the trigger, and they are 3 misses and 3 Ds in three corners of a target. There's just no possible way you're going to get better at that.
Yeah, what Lee's referring to is what we typically here at AgDefSol, what we call the 190. So shoot 100% accurate, and then add your speed till you're only 90% accurate, and then dial your speed downward until you get back to 100% accurate, and then dial your speed up till you're 90%. And eventually what will happen is you'll reach a plateau where you are as accurate as you can possibly be, as fast as you can possibly be. And then the goal is to always be more accurate than fast. So the goal is to get as fast as you possibly can be accurate. Yeah, absolutely.
So,
been doing that for decades.
Yeah, so.
Cool. Anything else? Rock bottles, bombs, hand grenades, alibis?
Yeah, there's probably some other stuff, but I think this is pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty good. It's good stuff. I don't think we hurt anybody's feelings.
Yeah, well, shouldn't, because like I said, these are some of those little things. Again, a few weeks ago, we talked about, working on some things and using video as a tool to analyze the things that you're doing. I think today it was really going, well, here are some of those specifics and the whys. And I think it's the whys behind some of those specifics. So, yeah.
Versa Thunderers suck. Just saying.
All right.
Them and Larson's.
All right. Thanks, guys. And we'll see you next time.
If you have a horrible grip, a perfect sight picture, and a perfect trigger press, you can make the shot.
Absolutely.
If you have a perfect grip and a mediocre sight picture and a perfect trigger press, you can probably make that shot. If you have a perfect grip and a perfect sight picture and you maintain a perfect sight picture even while you have a crap trigger press, you can probably still make that shot. Yeah.